Welcome to the Tricord Advisors podcast. This is where we answer your questions to help you get excited about your finances. This is Randy Barkley, and I'm Jeremiah Lee. We're both certified financial planners, and I'm also a California licensed attorney.
So let's follow up with our conversation. Let's talk about leading economic indicators, because we have really smart people, some economists that we follow, that have different opinions about some of these.
And the hard part is that most people follow the headlines,
right?
Us included. You read the headlines, and headlines are meant to be sensational. They're meant to be grabbing. They are not the complete story.
Right.
And often when you read the whole article, whether it's the Wall Street Journal or LA Times or New York Times, whatever you're reading, when you read the whole article, it's related to the headline, but even then it's slightly different.
There's different information.
Yeah. And so to really get a sense of the economy, the thing that's hard for a lot of people is there's a lot of news in our news cycle coming through. There's a lot of headlines that aren't the full picture. So we try and cut through just the headlines and get to economic indicators, and leading economic indicators are ones that are at the front of the pack. So when this specific item goes one way, we expect the economy to follow. So one that we'll talk about first is the M2 money supply. For most people,
what is M2?
Yeah,
it sounds like a military.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
tank
it's a measure that I think most people find it to be Greek or some sort of, but basically it's our money supply. How much money is out there? I mean, people know that the Fed is printing money, or the Treasury is printing money.
During the pandemic, the M2 went up, I'm assuming, right?
Went up, yeah. And there's M1, M2, M3. The difference is how much you count. Like, what are you? And M2 is what we consider the best one of counting basically all the available money. So money in your pocket, money in my bank, money in the listeners' investment accounts. It's all the available funds. And when you have more and more and more money, that money is chasing the same amount of goods. And so often you'll see price inflation.
You'll see inflation.
Because there's a lot of money trying to get
Think
this.
about the cars. If you have a limited number of cars and yet everybody's got money,
yep.
What happens to the price of cars? I mean, everybody, listening to us, if you went and bought a used car or a new car over the last year, you probably had to pay a premium for that car, a lot. Yep. Right?
And on the other side, when the money supply is lower, when people just don't have as much money around, the prices can come down. So,
well, who controls the M2?
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's not a direct control, right? The Treasury, of course, can print more money, and they can stop printing more money. But it also has to do with how much money gets patriated out of the country, how much money is here, how much foreign investment we have. It's a full picture of how much money is available. And so for this, the M2 has been going up, and as a lot of people know, just from headlines, even the last decade, it's been going up faster. And since COVID, it's been going up extremely fast. And there are some concerns, and mainly because they're printing.
So going back to 2008, 2009, because they printed more money because they lowered interest rates, but then COVID hit. So there's a reason why M2 went up dramatically, right?
Yeah, because they're putting more money in the system. And you think of the stimulus checks that went out.
Right.
Well, when we say printing money, in the olden days, it was actually printing money. Here, currently, they're just adding zeros to
digital.
Digital.
Hit the button.
Yep. Now there's more money that exists. And on one side, it doesn't matter because however much money is out there, just the prices balance out. But for a person, for individuals, you see all the prices going up, and your job may be paying you more, and maybe not. So it's a measure of the entire economy. And M2 has peaked. M2 was back middle of last year. It peaked, and it's been coming down
steadily.
And
there's a reason why it's peaking and why it's coming down. Obviously, the money is being taken off the table, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah. And there's a mechanism where they do it with buying or selling U.S. treasuries. That's the mechanism that if they buy up the treasuries, they're pushing out money. If they sell the treasuries, they're pulling out money. And there's some control mechanisms that they try and take, but they know that the economy is this big and their control mechanisms are this big.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to balance this. So as M2 comes down, we anticipate that leading indicator to say, well, inflation concerns are coming down. How fast, how quickly, that's to be seen. But when M2 money is going up, we can expect inflation. Now that's coming down, we can expect there not to be the same kind of inflation. So that's one leading indicator that may be speaking of recession, maybe speaking of just that the economy is cooling. The other that we want to talk about a little bit is the inversion of the yield curve.
Oh my goodness, boy, we are really popular at parties with this one.
This is a tough one. So there's a paper years ago that came out and said when the return you would get from a 2-year bond or a 3-year bond, a short-term bond, compared to a long-term bond, they would expect that if you lock up your money for a longer period of time, you'd be able to get more interest.
Right.
That's normal. So a 10-year bond would have a higher interest rate than a short-term bond. Well, when they invert is when the 10-year is paying you less than the short-term word.
Because it's just from a logic standpoint. If I'm loaning somebody money for 10 years, I would expect a higher interest rate on that money than if I'm loaning somebody for 2 years.
Yep. But currently, you could loan someone money for 2 years and make more money than if you lend for 10 years.
That makes no sense.
There's no incentive to loan for 10 years. So when this has happened, and what the paper kind of the hypothesis is that when those two curves, when they invert, when short-term bonds are paying more than long-term bonds, is that you're signaling a recession.
So the logic there is that if I think that a recession is imminent, I don't want to tie up my money for 10 years. I'm going to put it at shorter term. Hence, the demand for short-term bonds goes up. Hence, the interest rate goes up.
Yep.
And that's what we refer to as inversion. And it's probably one of the more clear signals that we've seen in the past that is an indicator of a recession coming, right?
Yep, a recession's coming. And the hard part is they'll say this is predicted, 7 or 10 out of the last 7 recessions,
right?
Meaning you can get some false signals.
Right.
You can have the two yields invert and then nothing happens and they return back to normal. But that is an indicator to say we're expecting a recession. What's interesting, we have the economists that we work with and we talk with, for everyone that likes one of these indicators and says, yes, that's it, this is telling us something, you have another who just is dismissive. I mean, that used to work, but that doesn't matter now. This is the one that matters. And that's kind of why you have so many talking heads, so many headlines.
And it goes back to our earlier comment. The economy is distorted because of all this money and all these things that we went through in the last going back to 2008. I mean, it really has distorted the economy going forward a little bit.
And what will it mean as we go? And that's part of clearing out the money that's there, but also how hard will the recession be? Will we have a recession? M2 coming down, I think, is a great outcome for most everyone. I think people agree it's good. However, what pain will that produce? I think there's an unknown there. We always say that it's hard to predict.
It is it's a glut of savings too. So as savings gets used up, M2 will naturally fall. Now, for those people who haven't saved, if their wages haven't kept up with the cost of goods and services, there's going to be a bite because all of a sudden they're going to have to reduce what they pay for. In other words, they're going to have to do a lot more shopping, or they have to keep their car longer. They're going to have to hold off on improvements to their house. All those things, you take it across millions of decisions that are being made in our country, it has an impact upon the overall economy, right?
And for most people, there's been layoffs. Some of the big tech companies have had some layoffs. For most people, this has not hit the household yet. Eggs have gone expensive for other reasons. Gasoline over the summer was very expensive. It's come back down.
Unless you're in California.
It'll never come back down. But with all these things kind of going up and down, there's the housing starts of building new houses. Some of the tech companies, they're feeling some pressure now,
right? But
they've not yet passed that to individuals in a way that is as meaningful as it may be soon. So we might be seeing in the coming months is harder times for individuals to make purchases, and that's where the recession will start feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
So those leading indicators, what we're watching is to see how the timing of this, as well as, and we always say it's hard to predict, but we want to react. We want to be aware of what's going on.
Yeah, and I think again, reaction means that we want to look at the macroeconomics. We want to make decisions based upon that, and we believe that macroeconomics is a way that you would make tactical decisions about your investments. Going back to the first part of last year, we made obviously a tactical decision to reduce the duration of bonds because we knew that interest rates were going to go up. That was going to have a negative impact upon bonds. So those are things that we do.
Yeah. And there's also that translates to households.
Right.
Do you take a big vacation this year? Do you change jobs right now? I mean, some of that is independent of just the finances, but having a good view of the economics. Economics are separate at times from the market, what you see in the stock market and what you see on Main Street.
Right.
Some days they are identical. Other days they split. And for people to make good choices with their money involves investing. It also involves their life choices and kind of what they get through. And we want to make
choice is a big deal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so many people feel pain, but it's because they made really poor decisions earlier, right?
And so if people know that there's potentially some lean years coming, it's a good moment to be saving. It's a good moment to be stable. Mm-hmm. It's a good moment to batten down the hatches to some extent, knowing that in the future will be other seasons where growth is great and be more liberal with what they're doing. But it's a good moment to acknowledge that there's potentially some stormy clouds in the future.
Yeah, I think, again, going back to the fable of the three pigs, the pig that built the stone house and his two brothers were out playing and kind of thumbing their nose at him. There's a real truism to that in the sense that you want to be, during times that are good, you want to be saving because the bad times may be coming. And again, we don't know how severe the bad times may be, but at the same point in time, We're trying to help people make smart decisions with their money. If you'd like to know more about what we do, please just go to our contact button on our website and ask whatever question it is. And we want to be able to sit down alongside of you and help you make decisions that you build the life that you love. Thank you for listening.